Tony. Night Dive have done it again. They've remastered another Boomy Shoot. I saw a post on Twitter the other day. It was like, it's just a picture of people cheering. It's like when a new version of some Eurojank shooter from like the early 2000s comes out.
Yeah.
When Looty Booty Shooty, the underappreciated Slavic shooter that was never ported to the outside of fucking Czechoslovakia or something, has now been remastered. The Boomer Shooter fans rejoice. But here we are, Quake 2. Don't know if you know this, Tony, but I was quite a big fan of Quake 1 remaster that Night Dive did. I believe I said
heard
it was...
that you were quaking.
I believe I said it was my best game I played last year, Quake 1. I literally played the entirety of that remaster. I played Quake 1, all the expansions, Quake 64, multiplayer, played everything. Don't worry, Tony. I know what you're saying, Joe. I can't get enough of Quake content. I need more Quake. Well, Tony, I got Quake. I've tested. We're ready for the Quake 2 deep dive. We are ready. This is the tutorial of Quake. It was telling me about medics there that can respawn units, which is very important in the expansions because fuck medics. They just keep respawning shit until you kill them. They're like archvales from Doom. They just keep summoning. This is teaching you about shields, which does come up in base Quake 2, I would say, yeah. There's quite a few shielded enemies, and then you can use energy weapons to shred through shields.
Okay, so these mechanics are the same as Quake 1, or are they different?
There's no shields in Quake 1. So right off the bat, one thing you'll notice between Quake 1 and Quake 2, Quake 1 is very much like Eldritch Horror, your hell demons through a portal. Quake 2 is very much like a sci-fi game. It's a completely different like atmosphere to Quake 1 in a lot of ways. Off the top of my head, if you were like, what do you like more, Quake 1 or Quake 2? I massively prefer the aesthetic of Quake 1 personally. I love like the fucking brown demon shit. I love that sort of stuff. Like the portals, the demons, that sort of stuff. I love that.
It was Quake 1 that had like the brutalist like architecture as well, right? Like that was quite cool.
There was a mod pack
mod for it, okay.
That had a competition to try and make the most brutalist architecture in Quake. But I think, you could say some of the architecture in that game is brutalist, I guess. Cutscenes. So, this is the Night Dive port of Quake 2. I have never played Quake 2, as I had never played Quake 1 when I played the remaster, but I knew how to check this out. Somebody went and eyeballed the cutscenes of every single cutscene for Quake 2, which Quake 2 has cutscenes, something Quake 1 does not have. And they basically remade the assets in 4K and re-rendered them, which I think is insane. They look really, really good. The cutscenes were super quiet for me. I couldn't figure out how to make them louder. Maybe I fucked up a sound setting somewhere, but I could never hear what was going on in the cutscenes. And I wish there was options to turn on subtitles. Oh, okay, there is subtitles. Okay, yeah, I've got subtitles. So there was subtitles at least.
Remade these models to then render this cutscene. That's insane.
Yeah. Somebody at Night Dive remade them.
Yeah, okay. I guess they have those 3D files forever now, but okay.
I mean, for me, I'm not really that interested in the story of Quake 2 anyway, but the story is pretty basic. There's these aliens from the planet Strog, and they've attacked Earth, and you're now at war with them, and you're going to their home planet to take the war to them. And that is the story of Quake 2. That's all you need to know. There's these aliens called the Strog, and you're going to fuck them. You're Strog fucking. That's pretty much all you need to know about Quake 2 for the story.
I'm glad the Boomer Shooter story is still... I mean, let's say bare bones. Gameplay first.
Yeah, gameplay first for sure. I mean, the gameplay of this game is really sick. I'd say it's maybe even more fast-paced than Quake 1 in terms of how quickly you're going around. I mean, in Quake 1, they didn't even realize, at least I I think they didn't realize people would do rocket jumping. Um, like a lot of the levels in Quake One are designed in a way where, there's one level where there's a lava pit, right? And
Yeah.
there's a key you need to get to the end of the level, and it's over a small lava pit. And for most people, you would just walk around the entire level, kill all the monsters, come back, and then that would activate the bridge to get you across. I saw that and I immediately rocket jumped across it from, 20 plus years of experience playing video games, and
Yeah.
immediately finished the level. But in Quake 2, there's literally like I rocket jumped up to an area and it was like, oh, here's a secret, you dirty rocket jumper. It was like
Yeah, so it
at
knew.
that point they knew that people were going to be rocket
Yeah.
jumping, and
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff in Quake 2, I think there's a lot more invisible walls. Like they tried to stop people sequence breaking as much. Apparently, so I haven't played the original Quake 2. Well, I kind of have, but we'll get into that later. But they fixed a lot of bugs with this Quake 2 remaster. I'm wondering if Night Dive put the invisible walls in to stop bugs happening from sequence breaking. Because
Right.
apparently I heard
Could make sense.
some speedrunning stuff is not possible anymore because on this port, because it's been broken by Night Dive fixing bugs. One of the big things about Quake 2 is you have an inventory. And in Quake 2, you would have to either bind items to individual keys, or you would have to scroll through an inventory and then click a specific key to activate that item. Holy shit. Having an item wheel, the quality of life upgrade for Quake 2 is so good. With the amount of like quality of life stuff in Quake 2, I feel like I love the Quake 2 remaster more than I would have liked Quake 2 itself without the remaster, I feel like.
Right.
Because there's so much like good shit in there. Oh yeah, Quake 2
so
is
that
silent.
wasn't in the original.
No, there's no inventory wheel. That is
Right. Okay.
like inventory wheel. There's a weapon wheel as well, which is very useful if you're playing a controller, which we'll get into later.
Yeah. I feel like there's always good to have.
But it depends how you want to play. Like,
Yeah.
there's weapon wheel. There is scrolling, so you can scroll and it'll show at the bottom of your screen like a bunch of weapons you have. Or you can do what personally I like to do. I'm one of those psychopaths that likes to have like 8 or 9 weapons bound to an individual key, so I can very quickly switch between them. And,
Oh, yeah.
that's sort of like I play Doom Eternal. And I have there's like 20 different ways you can shoot guns, and I have every single way bound to a key. And like Doom Eternal is really interesting, another id game, because there's quick switching in that game, so you can kill enemies really quickly by like quick switching between like I think it's the energy ballista thing and like a rocket launcher, and you could just go bam 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 bam, and you could do like this quick switching thing. I feel like the weapon switching in Quake is too slow to do anything like that. I would like it to be a bit faster than it is. Like it always feels like, oh, I want to pull out my shotgun, and then I have to wait for my shotgun to come out. Like obviously, that's probably how it was in Quake 2, so they didn't change that. Like Night Dive is very faithful with their remasters. Like we'll get into this later when we talk about the Quake 2 RTX remaster, which I also tested out because I wanted to see how it compared. I was like, oh, they kind of already remastered Quake 2. Let's see how it compares to the other remaster.
Yeah.
But let's keep talking about Quake 2. I really like Quake 2. I think the weapon selection you have is really cool. You have so instead of having the axe, what you're seeing here is the blaster. So this is your infinite ammo weapon. They got rid of the axe and they replaced it with the blaster. Yeah, it does like no damage, but it's, if you're completely out of ammo, at least you have something. I always thought it was really cool to have the axe because I got the achievement in Quake 1 for killing a shambler with an axe, which is like super fucking impossible to do. But I ran out of ammo, so I was like, I legitimately only have an axe. So I'm just running around trying to dodge lightning bolts.
I feel like if you want like an infinite ranging in my head, it's like I like the axe, I like the concept of an axe. Like I would always be like, okay, what if the axe is melee, but you can charge up a range attack? There we go.
You may like a medieval, my friend.
Yeah.
Um, you have like the fucking when you go into like the soul power mode and you just start spinning the axe around like crazy. That's always cool. It becomes like a fucking
Well,
helicopter.
yeah, that's what I'm there for.
The new Medieval DLC just came out. I kind of want to check that
Oh, did it?
out. Yeah, the Black Labyrinth just came
You,
out.
we said we're gonna. Well, you said you were gonna look into it, right?
Yeah, I really want to. I think Medieval's a really really cool
Yeah.
throwback shooter. So
I think
ray traced
out
as
of
well.
all these, I think out of all these things, that's like what I would like to play. Instead
But you've got as well as it. So in Quake 1, you had the shotgun and the super shotgun. Exact same setup in Quake 2. You've got a shotgun and a super shotgun, and then instead of having the nail gun and the super nail gun, you have the machine gun, which is like an AK, and you have a chain gun, which is like very much like the chain gun in Doom, just like
Okay.
the big silver cylinder gun, if you know what I'm describing. Then for explosives, you have El Clasico. You've got the grenade launcher, and you have the rocket launcher. You can pick up grenades and just throw them in this game, which is I don't remember if you could throw grenades in Quake 1, but yeah, before you get the grenade launcher, you can just throw the grenades, and it took me a while to get used to them having like such a delayed throw to them. You don't just like immediately throw them. There's like an animation there.
okay, so it's not like a hold either. It's like a.
There's the Hyper Blaster, which is what you saw at the beginning of the game, which penetrates shields, which uses energy cells, and then there's Tony. There's a fucking BFG, a big fucking gun in this game.
You loved it.
So-
I don't really like BFGs.
Yeah, we
They're
have.
fun.
There was no BFG in Quake 1, but we
Yeah.
have the BFG from Doom coming over to Quake 2. It's the BFG 10K, and
Right.
yeah, it is. It consumes cells. So usually, you'll have an alternative version of every gun. The machine gun and the chain gun, I can understand why you may want to use one rather than the other. Like, the chain gun legitimately just chews ammo. As soon as you start firing it, it shoots off a couple of rounds before it like decelerates and stops firing. So it definitely sends out bullets faster. So if you're fighting a big like tough robot guy, you definitely want to use that against him. But it'll chew up more ammo. So I can see like legit trying to save ammo by using the machine gun sometimes rather than just the chain gun. For the shotgun and the super shotgun, I pretty much, as well as in Quake 1, as soon as you get the super shotgun, you just stop using the normal shotgun. There's
Yeah.
not really that much point to ammo conserving. It's just like the super shotgun uses half the amount of ammo, but it kills them twice as slow. So you're just
Yeah.
you kind of just it just takes more time. I feel like with the shotgun.
Because I always feel like just going for like a different weapon or a different type of weapon, or like holds a different role, is better than just conserving ammo as a variant.
Yeah, the weapon selection in Quake 2 is really good. I will talk about the expansion weapons when we get to the expansion. So I have done a deep dive. I've said to Tony, look, I've been playing Quake 2 non-stop for like the past week, and I've played everything. I'm ready to talk about everything to do with Quake 2 because this game is fucking sick. This game is really cool. Yeah, I'll get into my final thoughts on Quake 2 versus Quake 1 as well at the end because
Okay.
there's a lot of differences. I would say, like, I know some people have said to me like, "Are you sure you're gonna play Quake 2?" Which immediately I was like, "Oh, why is that?" And it's like, Quake 2 was like a divisive game. A lot of people
Oh,
didn't
really?
like Quake 2
I
when it
didn't
came
know
out.
that. Okay.
And one of the things that it did that I'm not a massive fan is in Quake 1 is a super linear game, right? So you go to the end of the level, you go to the next level. In Quake 2, there's multiple objectives that span over multiple maps. So a lot of the
Okay.
time, you'll need to go to another map, push a button, and then come back to a different map. And this is
Right.
where the compass comes in. Because I think I would have gone fucking nuts without the compass. Because
Yeah.
you have like a computer that tells you your objective, but I was constantly like, where the fuck am I supposed to be going? At the beginning, I was like, I'll try not to use the compass. And then I was like, using the compass quite a lot. and some points. Like I wasn't using like a crazy amount. Like it's pretty much just go to the area where there's enemies and shoot them is like the general rule of thumb for boomer shooters. The
So you have
movement
to
is
activate the compass, right?
yeah. So you press Q, which is the weapon. It's the inventory wheel, and then it like gives you a bunch of arrows in front of you that point you in the direction of where you need to go, and it gives you a green arrow in the distance, which is the general direction you need to go, and then eventually it trails off, and then you can hit it again if you want more direction. So it's not just like you push the button and it tells you immediately where you need to go permanently, but it's like here's sort of the direction you need to be heading, which I think is a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the quality of life stuff with the compass and the inventory wheel. I love the linear design of Quake 1, and it's like a big reason why I loved Quake 1 was like you go into a level, you don't get lost, you just kill shit and you go to the end. Whereas Quake 2, I'm not the biggest fan of its multi-level spanning stuff. I kind of wish it was more self-contained, and that's just,
Yeah.
my opinion. But,
I think you have to have a point. Like you have to be careful with like going back in between stuff. Like you have to like make it interesting to do that.
Like, don't get me wrong, I like
linear's
games with backtracking elements. Like, immersive sim is one of my favorite genres of all time, and that is just you're in a massive hub and you're backtracking all the time. But that's a hub you're always
into that.
Well, that's a hub you're always in. Like, you look at the space station in Prey, right? And I know that like the back of my hand because I'm constantly going around it. But these missions take place over like 2 to 3 levels, and then you'll never see that level again, and you're somewhere. You're now on a Strog ship, and you need to blow it up. And it's like you never have enough time to learn the layout of an area before you're somewhere else. It's like I don't know. I wasn't personally a big fan of the layout of like going back and forth. That's not to say Quake 2 isn't a fun as fuck game. The combat is fantastic. I came to love a lot of the item stuff, like not having quad damage instantly go off when you pick it up was quite cool, because then it was like whenever you pick up quad damage in Quake 1, you're like, oh fuck, I need to find shit to kill, which is always a cool way to force the player to engage in combat and be more aggressive, I guess. But at the same time, it's always like, oh, I feel like I wasted my quad damage because I accidentally picked it up and I didn't want to use it here. I wanted to save it for the boss or something like that. For me, what ends up happening is I take all the quad damage and dual damage and everything and the invincibility upgrades. I get to the boss and I go, oh, I could probably save these. Maybe I'll use them. And I just end up like hoarding them and never using them a lot of the time.
Right.
So I've been trying to use them more like just, this guy's kind of tough. I could probably kill him without it, but I'll use it.
I guess once you get an idea of like how often you get them as well, you can like adjust when you use them, when you should save them.
Yeah, so the pickups in Quake, there's health to get your health back. There's also armor pickups, which I think is more health. I actually do not know how armor works in Quake 2. I just assumed it was more health, but it could be like a damage resistance system. I don't actually know.
Yeah, then also burns it to some extent. I would
but
assume
the way
it was damage resistance.
The way the armor system works is if you pick up a big armor, you can go to 100, but then if you pick up the small armor or the small healths, you can go over 100. And that's the same way it works to the first aid. So the first aid, when you pick up the med kits, they take you to 100, and then you find the stim packs, and the stim packs will give you like 2 health each. So if you're below health, they'll heal you a little bit, but the game rewards you for being better by having more health. So if you're able to keep your health up high, you can take those stim packs and add on to your health. So this game has this like health rewarding system, I would say, for people who can keep a hold of their health, I guess, which is a cool way to do it. I feel like in Quake 2 I was constantly, like, as soon as I got the rocket launcher, the level design is so much more open than Quake 1. I was constantly like, I wonder if I can rocket jump up here. I wonder if I can rocket jump up here. And I was constantly just trying to rocket jump, and there were several times that I was like, oh, I could rocket jump here, completely sequence break the game, but I had to stop myself from doing that because it's like, well, I could skip the game, but I kind of just want to see how Quake 2 plays without trying to like speed run through it and sort of miss out on, you know, how the game plays. Boomer shooter traps, they're always there to try and trick you. The classic shoot thing on wall activate thing. So if you've played Quake 1, if you haven't, the way you activate stuff is either you shoot it or you push it with your physical body. There's no use key. You just press it.
Okay. So you just slam yourself into objects.
One positive versus Quake 1, I guess I'm going to be comparing to Quake 1 because they did the Quake 1 remaster and I deep dived Quake 1 as well. I absolutely adore that game.
Yeah.
Boss design is way better.
Yeah, because they were super quick and you said
Quake 1 bosses, you walk around in a circle and you press a button. Quake 2 bosses are legit, they have health bars. They're not super mechanic depth, but they, at least there's some sort of challenge there rather than walking around in a circle or telefragging a boss.
Yeah, okay.
Which in one of the expansions, I'll talk about some funny stuff that happens. I need the red key. It's still very much, it's its own thing, but it's still very much go around, find the key, press the button, get to the next level.
Well, don't fix what's not broken.
Yeah, there it is. But yeah, Quake 2, yeah, it's not crazy long. How long? I'm trying to think about how long it took me to complete the Quake 2 main campaign because I played all the expansions as well.
How long was Quake 1? Was it like a few hours?
About 8 hours. Quake 2 says
8 hours. Okay.
Quake 1 campaign length. Thing is, I don't know because my Steam time is comprised of Quake 2 expansion, Call of the Machine, the new Machine Games expansion, which fucking rocks, by the way. Just throw that out there before we talk about it. Quake 1 is about 5.5 hours according to my quick Google search.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Quake 2 is genuinely longer than Quake 1, but it's also there's more backtracking in Quake 2 because of the aspect of non-linear levels.
Yeah, it's not the same quality of time.
Oh, you'll love to see the Super Shotgun. Potentially one of the best shotguns in gaming, the Quake Super Shotgun. It's so satisfying to shoot.
It's a nice shape as well. I feel like this should be like besides meant to have a prop of that gun.
Yeah. I think the enemy design in Quake 2 is fine. There's some enemies. I think generally I prefer the Quake 1 aesthetic and design. I don't know. I think the Shambler just may be one of the coolest enemies in gaming, like in terms of look up the Shambler from Quake 1. It's like this giant Yeti thing with like blood around its mouth. It looks so fucking cool. I love the Shambler. And then in this game it's mostly just alien dudes with guns, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's robot alien dudes. There's alien dudes. There's horrifying things in the water. For any of our people who are scared of water out there.
Just to reinforce that fear.
Yep. Yeah. I think the Quake 2 campaign is pretty fun, pretty decent. I'd recommend if you're getting stuck, just use the compass. The compass is really fucking useful.
Okay, so it doesn't give you like false directions or like false sense of where to go. It's
pretty decent. A couple of times it had me running around in circles, and I was like, "Oh, it's not 100%, but the pathing on it is pretty decent."
Okay.
There is interesting. Like, there's these guys that stick their tongue out at you and stuff like that. But it's mostly just there's this thing called the Tactician, which is like a floating robot, and I swear to God, it reminds me of something you would find in a Fallout game, like Old World Blues expansion for Fallout New Vegas. It's like one of those like floating little robots. I guess the idea was they were trying to go for very alien design. and I guess the idea is that they're the Strog, so they're kind of more uniform than Quake, but Quake is just all over the place. It's like, here's a human grunt. Here's a fucking arachnid spider monster demon. Here's a fucking Yeti that's gonna rip your soul open. It's like, I don't know.
I guess you get away with that with like demon stuff.
Yeah, I like the the horror. We can get into like story stuff because apparently Quake 3 tries to tie together the story of Quake 1 and Quake 2.
Okay.
Because Quake 1 is very much you go through these portal waygate things, and then you're just trying to destroy these evil dimensions, whereas Quake 2 is you're now a sci-fi marine in space, go and blow up these aliens. And then Quake 3 is like, we have to somehow tie this together. And even Machine Games tries to do this as well in some way, and we'll talk about that when I come to that. But I think that's most of what I got to say about Quake 2 specifically. I would highly recommend this. I'd highly recommend playing Quake 2, and I'd highly recommend this remaster just straight off the bat to anyone. It's a really, really good game. It's really fun. Just moving around in the game is so fucking smooth. Like, I can't understate just how good movement in Quake is. Just like jumping, rocket jumping, like especially, they had some slight differences between the Kex engine version of Quake 1 and I think the case here is that under the Kex engine, the movement system is fine. It's just Quake 2 movement. It's great. Is me activating quad damage, shooting some bad guys.
So it's not much difference in terms of movement. It's just solid
yeah,
Quake.
Very good movement.
Okay.
Yeah, Quake 2, really cool. Let's move on to the first expansion I played. So I'm just gonna pause it here quickly. Because when you finish Quake 2, it goes, play Call of the Machine, which is the brand new Machine Games expansion. And the new Machine Games expansion is really good, but I think you should play the old Quake expansions first, which is always my plan, was to play through the old ones before the new one, because I think there's like a big jump up in like difficulty and, well, there's a big jump up in like, the mechanics, right? Because these are old expansions, and Call of the Machine turns it up to 11. It's like, you've been playing Quake for the past 20 years. So have we. We have this new engine. We can completely turn up. We can make Quake levels that are so big they wouldn't be possible to run on the original tech, right?
Yeah.
And even some of the Quake 2 levels were actually expanded based on like concept art and early renditions for the remaster, which I thought was really cool. It's like, oh, I don't remember this place being here, but it turns out, it was meant to be there, but they couldn't fit it in, but Night Dive put it back in, which I thought was really cool. But I was like, I'm going to try the original expansions, and the first one I tried was The Reckoning. And I really liked The Reckoning. I think this was my favorite of the two original expansions that got released. The thing I really liked about this one, I know because I wish Tyler McVicker's review, because he got pre-access to this, and he put out a video where he talked about all the expansions and stuff like that, playing through them, and he was like, oh, I didn't like The Reckoning that much, but I really liked Ground Zero, and I had like the opposite opinion. I thought Reckoning was really good, and I wasn't a huge fan of Ground Zero. The thing I really liked about The Reckoning was, it's probably going to go back to the reason I really like Quake 1. It's much darker. You have like these weird black alien creatures that jump out of you from the dark. It is very much more like a, darker horror sort of thing than Quake 2 is.
So you're not being attacked by xenomorphs, though.
Oh, you get attacked by these things. These are more like xenomorphs than the other guys. I'll just point out the soundtrack. Alien. So the first Quake soundtrack, 9 Inch Nails, fucking sick soundtrack. I don't know if you know this, but the nail gun ammo packs in Quake 1 has the 9 Inch Nails band's logo on them. I don't know if you ever seen that. Okay. Yeah. I didn't realize that until somebody pointed it out. I was like, oh, I never saw that. But the entire soundtrack for Quake 2 was done by a guy called Sonic Mayhem, and it's really good. It's a really solid soundtrack. So yeah, it's
Is there
just
a new Sonic game, Sonic.
yeah, the new Sonic game, Sonic Mayhem. But yeah, the soundtrack's really cool.
Okay.
So
yeah.
going back, you get these brand new enemies. I'm on the wiki now, so I can tell you the actual names. They're called Gex. That's right, baby. Gex is back.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like the Gex. They have like they throw shit at you, and I love like how visceral. You can tell you're dealing damage to them because they start just like bleeding this yellow alien blood. That's one of the things I love about Star Trek is Vulcans bleed green. So immediately when you see a Vulcan bleed, you're like, oh, that's an alien. And it's like
it's cool.
In Quake 2, it's like you shoot these guys and they just bleed red. They're Strogs, but they're just kind of marine guys. And it's like, but this sort of like enemy design is much more like, oh, this weird fucking alien creature. What the hell is that? It's trying to kill me. I need to run. What other creatures?
Because they also they maintain. They also have like a health model, I suppose, a health texture. Is that the more damage you have, the more yellow they become?
Yeah, the more damage you do.
That's much better than a health bar.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously for a boss you need that, but if you're not, if it's just a few shots to kill them, then you
these
don't need
Ripper
that.
guards. Oh, I really like the Ripper gun in this game. So there is the Ion Ripper, which is an alternative to the Cell weapon, which basically the easiest way for me to describe this is: do you know the buzzsaw from Ratchet and Clank?
Yes, I do.
It's sort of like the buzzsaw from Ratchet and Clank, where
Okay.
you fire
That
these
sounds
saw
fun.
blades that go like bouncing around.
Yeah.
That uses energy weapons. I really like that gun. There's also the Phalanx particle cannon, which is an alternative for the railgun. How have I not mentioned the railgun yet? Okay, the railgun in Quake is so fucking cool. I feel like the railgun is like a standard issue gun for any boomer shooter these days. It is the de facto big long range weapon that just deals a tons of damage, gibbing people from a long range. It is fucking awesome. And yeah, it's like people always say like Quake 1 was really cool, but Quake 2 had the railgun. Like I think Quake 2 was one of the Quake 2 was one of the first ever games to have a railgun. Like it's
Really?
that
Okay.
influential. Yeah, like the railgun is really cool. And I fucking love it. And as someone who's been playing multiplayer Quake, which I'll talk about later, I'm pretty good with the railgun. It doesn't matter if I was cross-playing as Xbox players. I was railgunning people across the map. I'm good at Quake. What can I say? You have an alternative version of the railgun that is like an explosive railgun called the Ion Ripper. The Phalanx particle cannon, and this fires like these 2 projectiles per shot. But it's like the alternative version, because every weapon has like an alternative, and then usually the expansions were like, oh, let's make some alternative energy weapons. Let's make some alternative rail weapons. Let's just go a bit crazy. And also, you have the trap, which I was describing to you the other day, I think, where you throw it on the ground, and it's like almost like I've been watching Ghostbusters recently, and it is very much like a Ghostbusters, trap machine. You lay it down on the ground, and it's like it insta kills anything that walks over it. Like it opens up and it sucks enemies in,
Right.
and it basically it looks really cool. It instantly kills enemies, but when you kill the enemy, it turns them into a block of health, which you can then pick up, and it is an overheal as well, which is
Nice.
I think like the weapons in this campaign, in my opinion, are really well designed, because you have this trap, which is a really powerful weapon, and it's very useful. So it's like, oh shit, I'm on low health. I'm fighting a big enemy. Let's put a trap down so I can kill them. But it's also like well, I might have a bunch of traps and I'm doing really well. And I was talking about before, that design of let's reward the player for having more health when they're not in trouble. You can get that overheal instead of getting like a bunch of your base health back, which I'm like, that's really good design from Ed, you know.
Yeah,
I think that's a really
yeah,
cool feature. I mean, well, the expansions were done by other people, and I'll see if I can find it on the.
But
Well,
it sounds like a good combination of mechanics.
Yeah. Zack Street Entertainment, who's did The Reckoning.
Okay.
Let me look up their Wikipedia page. They did they went on to do Redneck Rampage, a notorious boomer shooter game that some people either like or some people fucking hate. So take that as with a grain of salt. But I love this expansion. I thought it was great. They also went on to.
Wait, so
They also went on to be Grey Matter Interactive, and they made the Return to Castle Wolfenstein single player based on Quake 3. But yeah, go on.
So what was Tyler Vickers' problem with this expansion then? Like, what's not liked about this?
I think he just preferred so this is very much more like smaller areas, which I like. I like the more linear stuff, where I think he was more of a fan of the other expansion, the Ground Zero, goes bigger. It's like, oh, look at, we're in Quake 2 now. We have a more powerful engine. Let's be more expansive of where we're going to go, which I like the smaller scale stuff. I like going from arena to arena. I like, I like linear stuff. I just got Sonic Frontiers out of my brain and was like, fuck, open world games a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think you have to be. I think linear is fine. I think we should have a segment for it. Like some people think there should be, but yeah, I think if you got a good idea for not linear, then go for it. But yeah, I think linear can be very good.
And also in this expansion, we have the dual fire damage, which is like a mini quad damage, I believe.
Right.
So it's basically, instead of doubling your damage, it doubles the rate of fire. So if you got like a weapon that fires very slowly, it's very useful. Or you can just pull out the chain gun and just go fucking mental with it. I mean, most of the power-ups are just like, you use this power-up and you just kill everything most of the time.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Oh, these are the robots I was talking about that look like Fallout enemies. Do these not look like the most Fallout enemy you've ever seen?
Yeah.
They must have been in
version, but
yeah, they must have been. Bethesda must have been inspired by Quake. I was trying to see if grenade jumping was possible, because I was like, you can definitely rocket jump in this game, and I was like, is it possible to get over there? Because I only had grenades at this point, and I know you can. I think you can jump with the grenade launcher, but I was trying to just jump with grenades because I've done some brief grenade jumping through Halo. Halo, I think it's Combat Evolved has grenade jumping. Halo 2 has grenade jumping. I think Halo 3 might have it as well. But, these old school shooter games, sometimes they have these weird grenade jump mechanics. And I was like, oh, I'll test this out and, see if it's possible. I always like to, test this stuff out and try and break the game sometimes. But yeah. I think I really like Quake the Reckoning. I think out of the 2 mainline expansions, I think it was my favorite. I like the smaller scale. I like the more horror stuff. I really like the weapon design. I think the weapon design was really good.
The mechanics sound like a better combination from
skip ahead.
Yeah, my personal tastes.
See if I can. I'm just skipping to see if I can. Oh, these are the trespassers. I need to talk about trespassers. I forgot about this unit. Let me scroll back. So, this enemy is actually one of the few enemies in Quake 2 that has been completely changed. Or it has been, not completely changed, but changed. So, that's something I should point out as well. In the later Quake games, they had, in the expansion stuff, they had much more advanced AI. The AI enhancements in Quake 2 Remastered are really good. And they've brought that over to the base game as well. So normally what would happen in Quake is you would see an enemy across a gap and he would stare at you and go, oh, I'm going to get you when you come over that gap. oh, he'd
You
shake
just
his
shoot him in the
fist
head.
at you, and it was pretty dumb. But you now with the AI will try and flank you. It will literally jump across pits to try and kill you, which is like so much more interesting. And it's like I know um, a lot of people who'd played Quake 2. Oh, here's how the compass works. I'll just see if I can grab that quickly. So I'll put like a arrow down. It's like you need to go this way, and then eventually it disappears, and then it just shows you the general direction, and then you can activate it again if you want more guidance. Here's me going, oh, I need to... I was trying to get a secret there, which is why I was trying to figure out where I need to be. I think I skipped past the Trespasser guy, because that's the exact unit I wanted to talk about. But these Trespasser, they're like one of the most recognizable ones, because when they see you, they scream Trespasser, and then they come at you. But from playing Quake 2 briefly, through Quake 2 RTX, which I'll talk about later. Basically, the original unit just kind of walks towards you and then tries to hit you, and they're very unthreatening. But these guys. But with the new Quake AI, if you get too far away from them, they will like charge jump across the stream and do like AoE damage at you, at your feet. And it actually turns them into like one of the more threatening units in Quake, which is like super interesting. I was like, oh, this is sticking out for no reason. Must be a secret.
Nice. It's good that they put thought into these things. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that works quite well.
I really like the Trespasser guy. I think it's well designed to make them more advanced. Like they're given that jump ability, so that they're less like they're more threatening and less static. The only thing I don't like is like the jump AoE is way too big. Like you cannot dodge it. Even if you see them coming to jump at you, as soon as they jump, you have to take that jump damage. There's no way to dodge it, which I would maybe like it to be a bit smaller. But yeah, if you hear Trespasser, just run. Or try and run, or just try and quickly deal with those guys.
Yeah.
Then let's move on to the next expansion, which is Ground Zeroes. So I will agree, Ground Zeroes is like probably more visually appealing in terms of like its variety. You get like these weird mining areas. You get some more enemies. You get some more weapons. Let me look up the enemies' names so I can tell you what they're called. Okay. One of my main reasons I hate this expansion introduces the turret. Fuck the turret.
Oh. Okay.
So there is turrets everywhere in Ground Zero. Like every single room you go into, it seems like there's a turret, which completely slows the game down because I immediately have to
turrets?
Stop what I'm doing and like try and run around the corner and flank this turret and hide from it so I don't immediately die to it. I think that's one of the main reasons I was more of a fan of the Reckoning rather than Ground Zeroes. You also introduces the Stalker, which is basically like an arachnid that jumps up and down from the ceiling. They're quite cool because they flank you and they sort of sneak up on you, and they sometimes you'll be looking at the floor. This is the new grenade. It is called the Tesla Mine. It's pretty cool because it's essentially you throw it on the ground and anything that comes near it gets zapped over time by this electricity, as you can see in a second. It'll activate. So anything that goes near it gets zapped, and then after a certain amount of time, it'll just explode. I think this little grenade is really cool because you can just be like, oh, I'm about to fight a boss, and you toss down some Teslas, and then when the boss comes out, it gets hit by them. Generally in boomer shooters, I'm not a big fan of traps. But this expansion features the alternative for the grenade launcher, which is the proximity mine. And the proximity mine is really cool. So you can fire these proximity mines at long range, and then when an enemy steps on them, they will blow up and kill them. I think probably my favorite way to design a trap is to have it propelled from a launcher.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Because at that point I'm not slowly walking around trying to throw these little doodads on the floor. I'm actually, running around and going, oh, there's a corner over there. I'm going to quickly lob a bunch of grenades from my grenade launcher and,
Yeah.
keep going forward.
You don't want to crawl around placing traps in a fast-paced game, right?
Yeah. You also have Daedalus, which are basically the Icarus, which is the flying enemy in Quake 2, but it's basically shielded. So you just need to use power weapons to take its shields down, or shoot them in the back. That's also a way to deal with shielded enemies. And then this expansion introduces the medic, which I think the turret is probably my least favorite enemy in Quake 2, but I do not like the medic. It's like the Archvale. Like, I feel like you could say the medic's good because it forces you to focus it, but it is so annoying when you just kill a bunch of enemies and then the medic comes along and reses them all, and it's like, well, I've got to kill these guys again. And I'm trying to kill the medic, but he keeps resing these guys in front of him, and I'm trying to get past these guys to get to the medic. It's constantly just made me feel like I was like, oh, as soon as I see a medic, I have to kill it, otherwise I'm not going to be able to enjoy the game. And it just led to me resenting the medic, I feel like.
Yeah.
And this is the expansion that introduces the medic. It's the expansion that introduces the turret. This is why, I have these sort of more negative associations with this expansion, which is unfortunate. Because I think overall it's, there is cool stuff. There is the proximity mine launcher, which is fucking awesome. The Tesla mines are fucking awesome. This also introduces the melee weapon of Quake, which is the alternative to the blaster, which is a chainsaw. It is an arm-mounted chainsaw that you can pull out, and it is the alternative to the blaster, which is basically a weapon you never want to use unless you're out of ammo because it does no damage. I tried to kill like a big boss enemy with it, and it was like, yeah, this is doing no damage. Yeah, proximity mines, really cool. Then we also have the ETF rifle and the plasma beam cannon. Okay, so the ETF rifle is essentially just, it is a alternative. It's a fletcher gun, so it's essentially like a nail gun, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
And then we have our alternative for the cell weapon, which is the plasma beam, which is essentially the microwave beam from the Doom Eternal. It's basically like imagine like a Ghostbusters beam. You fire a beam at an enemy and like slowly kills them over time, makes them explode.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Whenever you have alternates to the energy weapon, you've always got to think the BFG uses energy ammo, so it's always like, I think it's cool in that way, where it's like, I need to kill this guy who's got shields, but also if I do that, I'm losing ammo for the BFG, potentially. So it's an interesting choice to make. Again, ammo preservation choice, sometimes.
It just gives you more things to think about, more options to...
Yeah.
Like, more tactical, like, instead of, like, like gunshot to gunshot, I suppose.
You
I
also
can see that
get...
being, like, making more interesting to think about.
We get a ton of power-ups for the this expansion compared to the Reckoning. We get the IR goggles, which I have no fucking idea what they do.
It helps you.
I'm going to read the wiki page now. It makes everything turn red, is what it did for me when I played this expansion. Apparently, once activated, all enemies and items appear bright red while its effects last, making them visually distinct from the surrounding environment. Okay, it literally makes everything red. It literally makes stuff red. Okay, that's what it does. It was not very useful. And it's an activatable item that you can use once.
Okay, it's not a okay, that sounds useless.
Yeah. It feels like a lot of like...
to find secrets?
Fluff stuff. Like, there's the Defender Sphere, which I think I got once. That basically is like a shield that shields you, but I used it while fighting a boss once and it seemed not very effective.
Right.
It adds the Disruptor, which I think the Disruptor is another cool weapon. It's another new weapon, so it has its own ammo type, and it's essentially so the way it's designed and shown to the player, it's like, oh, it does knockback. It must do no damage, because it does all this knockback, right? So usually with a weapon with knockback, you associate that, for that trade-off of getting knockback, you're not going to be dealing a lot of damage. It does a ton of damage. It's like a fucking BFG. So not only are you knocking back enemies, you're dealing a ton of damage. So if you're playing this expansion and you're like, oh, should I just try and push enemies into lasers, which is something you will be doing in this expansion, which is cool, like using the environment to try and kill stuff, which is not something you really do too much in base Quake. You can do a little bit of it, but it's more so in this expansion with stuff like the Disruptor.
Okay.
But yeah, you'll get this in like the Machine Games expansion as well, I believe, and like just treat it like a fucking BFG. It's like a powerful weapon to use. Apparently there was something called a Hunter Sphere and a Vengeance Sphere, but I never saw this in my playthrough of the game.
Okay.
So, and apparently you can get a doppelganger, which will spawn an image of the player to confuse enemies. There's an antimatter bomb.
Why do you want to confuse enemies when you can shoot them?
I don't know.
Or does it just make it so there's less threat on you? Is that the idea?
I think it's like the decoy and ratchet, where you just throw something down. Yeah, I never used the decoy either. There's no decoy in Rift. There's no decoy in Rift Apart.
No,
I think it could be interesting to, if they try and redesign the decoy in a way where it's more active.
I feel like you can't make it too complicated, and I think should be more to do with like if you had like hordes of enemy, and like you could use it to distract like a large portion of them. I think that could make a lot of sense. Where like combined with like a flanking weapon or something, where just there's tons of damage if they're shooting something else.
I also found myself getting a lot more confused on this expansion. I was using the compass more, I think. It was like the objective for this was you had to go around and shoot 12 different wires around the map. I was like, okay,
so
then shoot some wires. Yeah, pretty much.
I guess to be fair, there's not much you can do. Like missions are just like go here to here, shoot some things. So
Tony,
then here's some reasons why you can't go in this direction.
I know you're going to be asked. So for Quake 1, I talked about, I looked up, because I was talking about my Quake 1 deep dive review. For Quake 1, there was... I looked up if there was Block Quake for Quake 2. I could not find it. I love Block Quake. I wanted to test that. I'm sure at some point they'll make
Quake.
They'll make a Quake 2 version of Block Quake. Which is not Lego. Do not sue them, Lego.
No,
they're Wilco blocks. They're not
generic.
Okay, Tony.
Pieces.
Tony, if you want to buy Wilco blocks, now is the time to do it, motherfucker. That place is shutting down. Also, as someone who's used Wilco blocks, what do you mean? Have you seen the news recently? Like they're literally shutting down.
But you saying they're going to be rare, so you could resell it, or
as someone who's built Wilco blocks, they're fucking awful. Do not buy Wilco blocks. Anyway. So for Quake 1, they had Quake 64. And when I played it, Quake 64 is Quake 1 ported to Nintendo 64. It's just a way lower resolution version of Quake 1, but it's the exact same game, but they had to make it way smaller so it felt on the Nintendo 64, right? So when I heard Quake 2 64 was being remastered, I thought, okay, it's just going to be the Quake 2 campaign but lower resolution. Tony, I had no idea Quake 2 64 is its own entire new game. The 64 version of Quake 2 is a completely different game to Quake 2, and it's fucking awesome.
Is this one where they technically used the previous Quake to make levels?
Yeah, I believe the technical way they reverse engineered the port from the 64 was they got it running in Quake 1 somehow.
Okay.
And then added the Quake 2 enemies to it. I'm not 100% sure on the technical. Look at the intro to this. This is so creative. I love this. I love, like, it's super low resolution, but I'm not a big fan of the cutscenes in Quake. You just have a map screen and you go from mission to mission in Quake 2. In Quake 2 64. Tony, Quake 2 64 is linear. There's linear levels. I love it. It's so much better than running backwards and forwards between levels. You get to the end of the level, and in like a Nintendo 64 game style. You go into third person, and your character does a little dance, and then you go on to the next level.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's great. I absolutely adore. I think this might be my favorite version of Quake 2. I love Quake 2 64. It's amazing, and it's such a shame that this has been stuck on the 64, and the only way to play it up until now has been like super low resolution, super low frame rate on a Nintendo 64 with the awful, Nintendo 64 controller. But now we actually get to experience it on PC, and it's fucking rocks. It's really cool. Also, you cannot crouch in Quake 64, which will be told to me several times as I keep trying to crouch. There we go. Quake 264 does not have crouching. There's no crouching. In Quake 2 64, it's more like Quake 1, where when you pick up an item, you immediately use it. So there's no item wheel. I guess having you just immediately use items is a limitation of how many buttons you had in a controller, which makes a lot more sense. For Quake 2,
the guns though.
For Quake,
the guns.
For Quake 2, I was like, oh, there's a CRT shader you can put on, and I was like, I love this CRT shader. I think it looks sick. I don't know how well you can see the CRT shader through the stream, but on my end, it looks really, really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I can see anything. I think we've done this before. It's so minor on streams.
Enhance. Look closely at your screen. I think it makes everything look like chunkier, which I really like the aesthetic of.
Right.
Because when you play Quake 1 RT. Oh, here's the dance. There's a brand new soundtrack. Quake 2 64 has its own soundtrack.
Interesting.
And it's not like rock music, it's like atmospheric creepy music. It's creepier. It's more like Quake 1. It's linear. It's super fucking cool. So
does Quake 2 64 have the same guns as Quake 2, or is it very much like Quake 1?
Yes, I think it has it has almost all the same guns as Quake 2.
Okay.
But completely different design. It's single level design, and then there's like 20 levels. So I started playing Quake 2 one night, Quake 2 64 one night. I was like, I think I could just finish this game tonight if I wanted to. But I was like, I'm going to stop and I'm going to go to bed and I'm just going to try and enjoy this. Because I was really enjoying playing this. I love this. I think it's fantastic. I think this is one of my favorite Quake 2 experiences. Like, if you're going to play some of the additional Quake 2 content, definitely check out Quake 2 64. Especially if you're like me and you loved Quake 1 and its linearness. Quake 2 64 is what you're looking for. It's fucking sick. It's really cool. Anything else to say about it? It's definitely like lower resolution than Quake 2, but it's also, was designed to be running on a Nintendo 64. So this, I don't know. I feel like you almost want to get immersed in that. Like, turn on the CRT shaders, turn on the square pixels, turn motion smoothing off, and just look at those chunky pixels and just enjoy the atmosphere.
The filter is completely stupid because like a lot of textures were designed with that in mind.
Yeah.
And so using it. I mean, depending on the implementation,
it
works.
I watched the Digital Foundry video on Quake 2, and John was talking about there's just one button to turn the CRT shader in the options, but if you open the console on Quake 2, there's additional options. You can completely fuck around with the CRT shader and change it around to your liking through the console, which I was like, oh, that's really cool that you can do that. Oh, by the way, the performance of this game, it's rock fucking. It runs at 4K 120 FPS on every single console. It runs Switch, I think, is 1080 60. It's native res max FPS on every console because Switch is a 60 hertz panel. Runs buttery smooth on everything. Yeah, it's great.
It's playing the best version.
I think, in my opinion, Night Dive with this remaster has probably done the best PC port of this year, in my opinion. It's fucking phenomenal. Right. Just the amount of work that they put into remastering Quake, get it running so well on the PC, running on all the consoles, remastering the expansions, taking Quake 2 64 off the 64 and porting it to PC, which is amazing, then making their own expansion through Machine Games, which make amazing stuff with the Wolfenstein games, and then even going as far as to preserve all of this history through the id Vault is so fucking cool.
Yeah. I
I
feel like
just
we could have easily lost a lot of this if just left.
shout out to fucking Night Dive. They're doing so much cool shit to preserve old games, and it's so cool to see. This Quake 2 remaster is so good, and it makes me so excited. Every time I see a remaster in a game and Night Dive names on it, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm so ready to play something really special.
Yeah. Even if it's something you never heard of, that they've chosen something and they have passion.
Oh, Tony, this port does actually feature one extra new power-up, Invisibility, which is a Quake. It's a Quake 1 power-up that is not in Quake 2, but it is in the 64 version. And I really like Invisibility. I think it's a cool power-up. It gives you the ability to, basically, you can completely walk past enemies if you use the invisibility, or if you attack while you're invisible, then the enemies know where you are and start attacking you. So you kind of have to choose between being stealthy or, going in and getting a good position and then attacking your enemies.
I guess that's why it's limited, because it activates immediately, right? So
yeah. But that was something I was like playing Quake 2 and I was like, oh, is there a ring of invisibility in this game? And there's not. But there is in Quake 2 64.
It's interesting.
So all weapons and upgrades from the base campaign made an appearance, though some visuals for several weapons were changed. For example, the railgun glows blue instead of red. The BFG cylinder was changed to green instead of blue. The view models of the weapons are layered 2D sprites rather than 3D models. They had to remake those, or add the remastered ones instead of the 2D sprites.
Yeah.
Even the animation. I don't know if you've seen the amount of detail they've taken from the original 3D polygons and added onto the new ones is insane. I'd recommend watching the DF video on Quake 2 because that deep dives into the technical stuff. Yeah, it's really, really cool. If you're a big Quake fan, like me now, big fan of Quake 1, big fan of that Quake 2 64, but yeah, play Quake 2 64 because I'm rambling and I've got more Quake to talk about. Oh,
next
Tony.
Quake.
Oh, hang on. I'll see if I can pinpoint the location.
Okay.
I can't remember when, but I can go into the next footage in a second anyway. I was like, oh, I heard it's coming out on consoles. I heard the controller support for Quake 2 Remaster was actually really good, and Quake 2 64 was designed to be played on a controller. I plugged in a controller and I tried playing it, and yeah, it's really good. Do I prefer controller over mouse and keyboard? Hell no, this game's designed to be played with a mouse and keyboard.
Yeah.
I personally massively prefer playing FPS with a mouse and keyboard rather than a controller, right?
It's crazy how some people are used to playing Halo with a controller and that's how they always
well, I mean,
play
back in the day, I played Halo with a controller, I played it on Xbox, and
but imagine being a PC player and still playing on a controller.
As soon as the Master Chief Collection came out, I went to mouse and keyboard. I don't have any nostalgia for the the actual controls of the controller. It was more so the game itself. But no, I know there's some people who will sit and play with a controller. And then
I've seen people because they've
I'll play it.
They will load up Call of Duty on the PC with a controller.
Yeah, I have lots of friends who they will play shooter games like Far Cry or something like that, and they'll load up and they're playing a controller. And then I'm like, why are you playing the controller? He's like, well, I used to be a console gamer. I like playing a controller. And I was like, but we were playing Overwatch and you were playing with mouse and keyboard. If you can play Overwatch with a mouse and keyboard, why don't you play your other games with mouse? Surely you would have more control over the game.
I don't know. It's very confusing.
Anytime you see me using a weapon wheel, that's usually when I'm using a controller.
Yeah.
But I was like, well,
I like weapon wheels
Tony,
all the time, personally.
They've remastered this game. Night Dive does a fantastic job. It can be played with a controller. Surely you could play it on a Steam Deck.
Here we...
So I was like, well,
Yeah.
I've got to satiate my curiosity. Can you play Quake 2 on the Steam Deck? And the answer is, yeah, you can. And it's a pretty good experience. It runs pretty well. I think it's locked 60
Well, that's a
FPS.
controller, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could dock the Steam Deck and plug a mouse and
Yeah.
keyboard into your dock if you wanted to. And
You
you
can
could.
get your Wii remote if you wanted to.
But I was like, oh, it was, Quake 264 is designed to be played with a controller. Let's just load it up on a Quake 64 level and just test it out. Oh, here's the chain gun I was talking about, by the way. It's very much like the chain gun from Doom. Look at that. Sounds just like it. I'm turning the volume up and dying. Here's me playing with a controller. Quite quiet. I'll turn it up a bit. But yeah, here I am using the weapon wheel. Did I not?
Makes you look more drunk when you're.
I'm not getting any sound. I think it's going to be very loud. Hang on. Here we go. Here's sound. Yeah. I didn't have sound playing because I think I had my headphones connected, and then I disconnected them.
Right.
Yeah, which is why I didn't have sound for a second there. Yeah, I have sound, and it's like every time there's a secret from exploding something, I was like, yes, I was trying to get that secret. I was definitely not just firing a rocket in that random direction trying to kill an enemy. Ah, yes, that secret I meant to get. Yes.
I mean, it's somewhat satisfying. Accidentally finding it with explosions.
Yeah. Here's me dying. What I feel like you could definitely play through the whole of Quake 2 on a Steam Deck easily. I think I tried it with gyro aiming as well, because that's something you can do on the Steam Deck, something you could do with a PlayStation controller.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like gyro is a thing in the same way like moving from mouse and keyboard to controller, moving from controller to mouse and keyboard, you need to commit a lot of time to get used to it. Yeah. I still feel like gyro is not something you can immediately pick up and use. I still feel like
I can't.
There's from using gyro briefly, I'm still not happy with my gyro control skill, and I think if I committed more time to learning gyro, I could definitely use it more in games, but generally I'm okay with just not playing FPS games on a Steam Deck or a controller.
Don't play that genre.
I usually I'm like, well, on my Steam, I'm just going to play platformers where, controller's superior in my opinion. So,
or like a third-person action game or something else.
Tony, does Quake 2 run on a Steam Deck? Yes, it's flawless. Play it on Steam Deck. It's a really cool experience. You might not want to play it on the controller, but it's still a cool experience to play.
I think so you're saying out in a pinch, if you're on the train, you can still play it.
Yep. So let's move on to the final expansion on this Quake deep dive, and we have Quake Call of the Machine. And the way this works is very much more like the original Machine Games expansion from. Turning off the CRT shaders and stuff there, so we can get the most visual goodness. It's very much like the Machine Games expansion from Quake 1, where it's like this hub world and there's lots of little missions that you go to. Whereas
it's a Stargate.
It's a Stargate. It's set up where essentially each level is comprised as you take over a marine and you get dropped into a different environment which you fight enemies in.
Right.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
So you're saying before this was the one that got turned up to 11 in terms of mechanics?
Yeah. So there's one of the missions is called I think one of the missions is called Suicide Run or Suicide Mission or something like that. And you spawn into the mission, right? And you drop into the mission and it gives you a BFG at the start of the mission. And whenever you get the BFG, you go, oh, what boss am I fighting, right? What horrible thing's about to happen to me? The game starts and 50 doors open and 100 Marines come out of them, and then you fire this BFG and the walls are just covered in Marines. All of them are dead. It's like, oh shit, this is cool. They were at the time, Quake 2, you couldn't turn up the amount of enemies you had on the screen. You had like much smaller groups, and it's like with this expansion, they're like, we can now just give you a BFG and put 100 enemies on the screen. Let's see what happens. Like they've really dialed up, the amount of enemies and weapons and stuff. And the environments are really cool. The environments are really big compared to the base Quake 2. Operation Corpse Run is what it was called.
Okay.
So I think the expansions feature a lot of the base Quake weapons, and I think they feature it's like a mix of like expansion enemies and expansion weapons as well, and it sort of varies depending on the different operations. So there's 6 operation: Corpse Run, Laser Eyes, Ruined Earth, Wastelands, Firewall, and Darkest Depths. I think it doesn't have much description on what they are. I think Darkest Depths is my personal favorite, or Corpse Run, because Corpse Run is just like, you're not coming back from that mission, and it's just going to be, balls to the wall. The density of enemies is just going up. This is the first one I played. I think this might be Laser Eyes or something like that. This is pretty much just like a tech base, just full of way more enemies than you would normally have. But the thing with the Quake expansions is they usually go, you've played Quake before, let's turn up the difficulty a bit.
Yeah.
Which is why I started on the medium. I started on the medium difficulty because I usually just like to play on normal. I'm like, usually like the normal difficulty is what the developers usually expect players to pick. I generally would say. I could be wrong, but because like
it feels like that's where it's better than the rest of like modifiers up or down from.
And as it tells you, like on Halo, it says heroic the way it was meant to be played, which I usually pick heroic or legendary on that circumstance. But I played through the base game and I was like, I think medium's a bit too easy. But then, as what happened with Quake 1 happens, I go, well, I'm going to play the expansions and the difficulty's going to go, it's going to start to go up. So I'll just leave the difficulty and it's probably just going to get harder. I'm like, yep, it just gets like a lot harder. So it's like, even if you, like with Ratchet and Clank, when the game got harder in Rift Apart, I turned the difficulty up because I was like, this is a static game, right? There's only one game in this, but I knew with the expansion and stuff like that, and especially, someone designing a Quake 2 map pack 20 years later of playing Quake 2 is probably going to be a lot better at Quake 2, so they're going to ramp that difficulty up a little bit. But yeah, I really like these missions. They're really cool. I talked about the Corpse Run. This one's pretty cool. My favorite one is Darkest Depths. Quake 2. I'll just see if this is the one I think it is. Because again, Tony, I'm going to blow your mind. It's the one that's the most like Quake 1 in terms of its theming.
Okay. It's just dark horror.
Yeah. So basically you go into this you are an unnamed marine and tasked to retrieve the Strog disk in a location resembling the Strogos moon and the
what? The Strogos?
The moon of the Strogos, of course.
Okay.
The unit comprises levels 2 deep, 2 greedy, fatalism, and turbine. So it's like this ritualistic, like cult-based, like horror thing design where it's like you go into this mine and there's this door and you go up to it and it's like an ancient evil is emanating from this door and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, this is the sort of shit I like. And essentially, Tony, you play through these like really cool levels, and then you get to this the big end of the level, right? And it's like you go into this ancient evil door after you've gone through these levels, and you go into the door, and it's a portal, right? And it's like the gates from Quake 1, and you go through the gate, and you're in the opening level of Quake 1, and there's a shambler, and it's like you're literally playing the map from Quake 1, and then immediately you get teleported away, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, I wanted to play Quake 1. I was immediately, literally, I was like, you fucking teased me. Like, they show you the shambler, which in my opinion is like the coolest enemy in Quake Quake history, Quake 1, right? And immediately they go, no, you can't play it. But you then fight the boss, and Tony, the boss of that mission it's the boss from Quake 1, which is the guy in the lava that you run around in circles.
Yeah.
But instead of being the guy in the lava, it's a giant shambler.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, that's really cool. That's like, nostalgia bait for like Quake 1 fans. Like, I'm like, that's a lot of the bosses in this game are like, they do feel like they are bigger versions of normal enemies, just turned into a boss sort of thing, which I'm like, some
Right.
people might be disappointed with. But I think overall, like,
Yeah.
the design of the arenas, like having these more bigger open arenas and having like more enemies in them is much more what we're used to in games like, Ultra Kill, Doom Eternal, like these more modern ideas from boomer shooters where it's much more
Yeah.
about, you know, we can deal with a bunch more enemies like in terms of our difficulty skill, but we can also deal with them in terms of our computing power as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Machine Games did a fantastic job in doing this mission pack. I think it's really cool. I love that there's nods to Quake 1. I love that there's entire missions that are based on you going on a suicide run and just blowing up a million units with a BFG. I think this mission pack's really cool. I said some people complaining that it was a bit, they kind of throw a bunch of enemies at you. Some people didn't like that. Didn't think it was that Quake 2. It was a bit, 6 different missions. So I remember we alluded to it maybe connects Quake 1 and Quake 2 like Quake 3 tried to.
Yeah.
So at the end of the Darkest Depths mission, which I was talking about, you fight, you go through a warp gate, and then it's revealed that the Strogos came through the cosmic horror gates that the
Right.
demons come through in Quake 1. So they're trying to connect the sci-fi alien Strogoses with the weird demonic warp gate things, the slip gates, I think they're called.
Okay.
And I think they also tried to do maybe something similar in Quake 3. I've heard that Quake 3 tries to tell the story. I don't know if you know this, but Quake 3 has no single-player campaign.
Oh, does it
Quake
not?
3 is a purely a multiplayer arena game.
Okay.
And people were saying like
That's disappointing.
it would be really cool for if they wanted to remaster Quake 3 and they just they got like Night Dive or Machine Games just design their own original campaign to
Yeah.
go with the remake. I think that would be a really cool idea.
So
Um,
when in Quake 3, then when do they like have the story stuff? Is that like where is that just
Maybe it's
each arena
like
has its
in the
own?
maps
Yeah.
design. Again, I haven't played Quake 3. I've just
So I feel
heard
like you
this.
should like get the if that is the case, like, you get like, each map and like try to imagine what the story would be from that and what the levels would be around that. That'd be kinda
Apparently,
cool.
Quake 4 has a single player story, so they could definitely
Okay.
remaster Quake 4 in the campaign of that. And I think there was already a Quake 2 remaster as an Xbox 360 game. If you got Quake 4 on the Xbox, or it was like a pre-order reward or something like that, which is pretty interesting to see. Apparently, there's a PS2 version of Quake 2 as well that they didn't port over. I don't know how different it is to the PC version or the Nintendo 64 version, but it'll be interesting to see if that has its own like levels and stuff like that. So you see here, they're upping the Marines, and you get to go, oh fuck yeah, I'm gonna blow up all these Marines with a grenade launcher and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let's move on because I've got more Quake to talk about, Tony, and we're almost, we're getting slowly towards that 2-hour mark at some point. Let's move on to Quake multiplayer. I played some Quake multiplayer because I was like, I played Quake 1 multiplayer. I thought it was really cool. And I was like, oh, this just came out. It's probably the best time to test the multiplayer because it's going to be the most people playing the game. I think this was about a week after the launch. So not the maximum amount of people you could have, but, if there was less people, probably more realistic. I mean, I think for the Quake 1 remaster, I played it like a year after release, and the multiplayer servers weren't that populated, but there was still like quite a lot of people playing. I found
There's
like
enough.
I talked to people, like I typed to people and stuff like that when I joined them, and I was asking them like, "Oh, I'm not sure. How do you pull up the scoreboard and stuff like that?" And just talking to people, and a lot of people I talked to, they basically said, "Oh, it's really cool that you get all the maps from Quake 2." It seemed like most of the people I talked to had already played Quake 2 or the Quake 2 multiplayer in some capacity, and they were coming back to relive their nostalgia. I think a lot of
Right.
the people who are going to play the Quake 2 remaster, possibly for the first time, are probably less likely to go onto the multiplayer. I don't know if you know this, but Quake 1 and Quake 2, you can play the entire game fully crossplay. You can play. Sorry, you can play the whole game crossplay. Like I'm playing with Xbox players right now, I think. But what I'm saying is,
Right.
you can play the entire campaign co-op if you want to online.
Okay.
I don't think many people know this because it seems like not many people talk about this. But if you wanted to play Quake and Quake 2 as a co-op FPS game, which I know some people have been doing, it's 100% possible. I just didn't do it because I don't know anyone who would want to play Quake 2 with me, and I also wanted to experience it single player first. But if
Yeah.
if any of my friends was ever like, "Oh, I kind of want to play Quake 2, do you want to play it co-op?" I'd be like, "Fuck yeah." Apparently, Tony, this game has 8-player local co-op.
Okay, that sounds insane.
I don't have 8 controllers, but I could literally, I have this on my Steam Deck. I could put this on my Steam Deck downstairs and we could play 4-player co-op Quake if you wanted to when I see you in a
Could
few
you?
days.
So is that loaded up for like multiplayer and then like you load in campaign levels? Is that how you do that?
I think so. I think we could either play PvP or we could play campaign co-op, which is like
Right.
really interesting.
Yeah.
But I was playing on this and I was like, I think it was an American server because I think whoever's hosting it is the person, who decides where it's hosted. So
Yeah, so it's peer to peer.
I was getting a lot of ping on that server and I was like, oh, is it just because I switched to Wi-Fi recently and I was like, oh, is it just, my Wi-Fi is not performing well, or is it, just an American server? I tried hosting my own lobby to see if people would join. I think I had like a couple people join. I had one guy join, and then I sort of talked to him about the stuff I was talking about. I was talking to him, and he was saying like, I was like, oh, your ping's a lot higher than mine. Where are you connecting from? And he was like, oh, I'm in America, and I was like, oh,
Right.
I'm in the UK. That's probably why you have such high ping. So and then I played on a different server, and I had low ping. So, it's pretty cool. I love how all of the different levels have these little secrets. It's like, oh, if you press this button, you can get like a mega health, or you can get a mega health. A mega health is an item I haven't talked about yet. There's a tombstone. There's a pickup in Quake 2 that gives you immediately 200 health, but that 200 health slowly decays over time. So you're incentivized again to be aggressive and go forward and
Yeah.
try and use that health.
Yeah. It's always nice to see.
But yeah, it's cool that you could learn these maps and learn all the secrets are and stuff like that. I made, and then I have another game mode because this is just like deathmatch. I have railgun fragging, the railgun one shots, and I ended up finding a server with a bunch of people all fragging each other. It's sort of like Golden Gun, the railgun. It's very much just as soon as you shoot someone, they immediately die, sort of thing.
Right.
I was just skipping there because there was one guy in a lobby on like an Xbox, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to kill people with my controller." He was just like, full, voice, unfiltered voice activity.
Right.
Yeah, I do think it's funny, like seeing crossplay between Xbox and seeing crossplay between the console versions and the PC versions, and multiplayer I think is big with like railgun aiming. You're gonna have a big advantage like on a mouse and keyboard, and I was
Sure.
consistently winning lobbies with the railgun. I got beaten a couple of like 1 or 2 times, but
It's interesting how you were playing on console though. It's what my surprise is.
I'm gonna guess there's like a heavy aim assist for the multiplayer,
Yeah.
or maybe gyro controls. Yeah, I had so much fun. I think I played this for like an hour, or like a couple of hours. Just literally this one game mode. It's just one shot railgun. It's just I don't think I've shown off the railgun yet. This is the railgun. It is a awesome long range sniper weapon. It is fucking awesome. It is really cool.
It looks very alien, or very. I don't know. It is very weird.
Yeah, I mean it is, like an alien gun. Oh, there's someone talking. It is very much like a alien weapon, and I think it's become like an iconic weapon. GG guys, you got to type after
GG.
somebody gets the frag limit. You got to type GG in just to show your respect. I mean, unlucky Atom won that game, but you know what, Tony? I'm on the comeback. You know what? Maybe I win this lobby. Maybe I won this lobby.
Did you win?
Yeah, I won.
Okay.
I won quite a few lobbies actually.
Okay.
I was having a lot of fun playing this. I literally was like, let's get some quick gameplay of the multiplayer, and I just sat down and played Quake 2 multiplayer fragging for hours. It was really fun. Can skip ahead a bit. There you go. Look, GG. 20 kills, scoring on the top. Frag limit.
Fair enough.
I think at one point, because we had lots of people in the lobby, and then at one point, it just got down to me and this one other guy, and we were just like trading frags. And it got real intense, and like whenever you jump in Quake, you make the noise and like I feel like that's like a baiting out tactic. It's like a taunt in multiplayer. It's like because normally you don't know where your opponent is, and it's like if you want your opponent to know, you like taunt them. You start jumping. It's like I'm over here, come fight me. I don't know. I like PvP shit. I like this sort of stuff, so I think this is really cool. And next up we have the id Vault. The id Vault is really cool because this is what I was alluding to earlier. You get concept art, you get like early design documents. You can see the authentic coffee stains on the scanned in documents of design documents. It's great for preservation. But the really cool thing is, as well as seeing how these E3 trailers and stuff looked, there's playable versions of it. So they took the E3 build and they made it a playable game that you could try out.
That's really nice because like normally it's just vertical slices that are never seen again.
Yep.
And I feel like they tend to be like different enough, whereas it's nice to experience it. And yeah,
it's interesting
really
to
cool
experience, but it's not anything to write home about playing the E3 trailer. It's very much just they give you a bunch of weapons, and it's very much sort of like familiar Quake levels in different orders and shorter.
Right.
There's some slight differences, but it's mostly the same sort of thing. And then you get to the end of the level, and it's like, this is the end of the level. And then you go on to the next one. Like it's very much, it was a build just to show off the to E3, like what Quake 2 was going to look like.
I just find it so fascinating.
Oh, and then there's no difficulty options. So it's just one. I felt the enemies were dying very quickly, so I was like, I think this is probably easy. Which would make sense if it was an E3 build. They would want the enemies to not kill you too quickly.
Well, you also want to just like get through it and like show what you want.
I mean, if you're gonna give me a railgun at the start of every level, I'm gonna use the railgun. I mean, it's a fucking sick weapon. I am a railgun enjoyer. Like, there's so much to like about Quake 2. Like overall, like even if I generally prefer Quake 1's design, there's so much cool shit in Quake 2. Like the railgun is infinitely better than the Thunderbolt gun from Quake 1, in my opinion.
Right.
I think it's just it's better. It's a better gun. But it's cool that this was accessible. I played this for a bit, and cool to see preservation stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And Tony, I know what you're saying. Joe,
yeah,
we've talked about the Quake 2 remaster. Wasn't there already a Quake 2 remastered by those pesky little guys over at Nvidia? And Tony, guess what? There was Quake 2 RTX. I showed you footage of Quake 2 remastered, and you said, "Is this the
Yeah,
RTX version?" I was like,
because
"No."
at the start, like the sun, I can't. It there was no reflections at the time, but like the reflections obviously give it away.
Get ready to look at footage of me playing through the first levels of Quake while looking at every single shiny surface very intently. It's like when I first played Portal, and every time I would shoot down a portal, I would just spend like 10 minutes just looking through the portals and looking at all the
Yeah,
effects. Or the first time I played Half-Life Alyx, to this day, I cannot load it up without throwing and smashing a bunch of bottles and just playing around with the physics. There is stuff in gaming that's so cool, but immediately you can see the textures in this game are very different to the remastered version, where they're much more faithful to the original artistic intent.
this is
Whereas,
more just modern.
yeah, I was like, oh, this game's very dark, but they thought about that. They give you a flare gun, which you can just pull out with infinite flares in it in order to light up
Cool.
areas that are too dark. Because one of the big complaints with Quake 2 RTX was it it is too dark. That was on the store page. People just kept saying it's too dark, which I would agree. I think like the lighting for Quake 2 Remastered is a lot better. Like, I
Okay.
think this game looks really cool. I love the ray tracing and reflections. Like it is, I think it's path traced, I believe.
Oh, really? It's the
Yeah.
full. I mean, I'm a big yeah. I think that these sort of metals and like subtle, shiny reflections I do really like, and like these full metal environments lend themselves well to. We don't really see that in games at the moment, so it's
But
hard to see.
this game is really hard to run, not just because of
Right.
the fact that it's path traced like Portal RTX or Cyberpunk. Oh, just
Yeah.
looking at the water of it, dude. I just gotta walk
I
around and stare at water.
That's interesting. So you like the water. I start staring at the lights and like how they glow and things. That's what I really like in these sort of demonstrations.
But what I was gonna say was what was I gonna say? What was I saying, Tony? It's path traced.
You're saying it's difficult to run.
It's difficult to run not only because it's path traced, but they used the I don't know if you know this, but the thing about id is whenever they made a game, they would just completely release the source code online.
Yeah.
So they did that for Doom, they did that for Quake, and when by the way, when they released the Quake 2 remaster, they released the source code online, so you can look at it and fuck
Cool to
around with
see.
it and make mods and shit like that.
Yeah.
Because this NVIDIA remastered Quake 2 with RTX on a OpenGL license, they were not allowed to put any proprietary systems into it. A proprietary upscaling system such as deep learning supersampling. So to this day, there is no DLSS in Quake 2 RTX. You're not allowed to put it in because of licensing
Right.
issues.
Yeah.
But there is an upscaling in there that is non-proprietary. There is FSR 1.0. So you can run, which I did not use because FSR 1.0 is like smearing
Yeah.
Vaseline on your screen.
You want two and not one.
But you couldn't put 2 into it because it's proprietary, right? Or it requires it's not proprietary, it requires a direct implementation, which would have to be done by AMD or it would have to be done by AMD or Nvidia, and I don't think Nvidia would put in resources or time to adding FSR2 to a rival upscaling technology to a
but
remastered game.
okay. I think that's incredibly petty if that's the reason, because like.
Well, FSR2 didn't exist when they released this.
No, I think that's more fair. I think that's way more fair.
Like, that would be something they would update it with, but at this point, we have the Quake 2 remaster, and it's, it would be nice if there was they added the RTX package to the remaster. I don't know how licensing works for that.
It's like hacky ways to get people to try to add it to games, right? But yeah, be like basically modding it with it in at
Well,
that point.
you said to me, like, before we started recording,
Yeah,
you were looking at his footage and you were like, oh, this looks so good. This is the way I would play Quake 2. And I
yeah,
immediately said to you,
personally,
no, I don't think I would, and I don't think most people should.
right?
The quality of life features of Quake 2 Remastered make it so much more enjoyable as a game compared to lighting. I think if you wanted to play Quake 2 RTX, you should at least try and play through the game on the remaster first, because it's only non-linear level design. There's no quality of life updates. There's no item wheel. There's no compass. You're gonna get lost.
You get lost.
You're not
Yeah,
gonna realize where you're supposed to
fair.
go. You know, it has very shiny lighting, but you have none of these quality of life features that you get from the Night Dive port, which is the big shame. Like,
And if you're not experienced,
I was like, I'm just going to record a little
bit.
bit of footage and then I'm going to stop playing. And I kept playing it for hours and I just was progressing through the game. But it got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm running around in circles and I have no idea where to go. And I can't activate the compass. Oh, here's something really interesting to point out that they changed in the remaster. Because this is the original version of Quake with ray tracing. So this is the original Quake, and I can talk about the differences between the games. The machine gun in Quake 2 has a lot of recoil, whereas in the Quake 2 remaster they removed the recoil, which I think makes it a better gun, but that is another change that they made to the game, such as the Trespasser upgrade / change. And the recoil on the machine gun was completely removed in the remastered version from Night Dive, which is an interesting change. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's curious.
But I was
what changes are made to still be faithful? I do find
I
interesting.
ran this on the default settings it was set to. I don't know if it was set to Ultra, but 4080, fully path traced at its native resolution, 120 FPS plus.
Oh, there's heads to a box then.
Yeah. I was able to run it at 120 path traced. Looks fucking good, and yeah,
smooth.
It's a shame they can't add upscaling, because it would be able to run even. Imagine this with like ray reconstruction DLSS. That'd be really cool to see.
I mean, I would take FSR 2.0 first, but yeah.
Why would you take FSR 2.0 first?
Oh, realistically, what's going to be implemented?
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, sure. I would just say generally, I think
the
image quality of DLSS looks a lot better than FSR 2.1, in my opinion, and I think most people's opinion. Like it's they're about the same in terms of performance gain, but the image quality is a lot better in DLSS, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, but man, yeah. So when I clicked on this, the reason I never played this fully other than testing it very briefly on my 2080, which cried. Also, I think this is like maybe borderline unplayable on like definitely the older AMD ray trace cards. You definitely need to use some sort of upscaling with the FSR 1.0. Maybe there's a way to mod in upscaling? I don't know. But the version they released was the free version, which is the shareware version, so it's the first 3 levels. So all the reviews I read were like, yeah, it's pretty cool that it's, ray traced and stuff, but it's only the shareware version. They haven't got the full game. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll wait for a remaster instead of, a Night Dive remaster rather than playing the ray traced version because it's only the shareware version. When you install this, if you have Quake 2 installed, which I had at the time, because I installed Quake 2 to play the remaster, you can take the game files that you have for Quake 2 and then play the full game through RTX. You can play the full game in RTX, but you just need to own a copy and have it installed of the actual game file that you can read the data from legally. Which I was like, well, nobody fucking told me that in the comments of the Steam reviews. Another thing that you're just like, you read the Steam reviews, you take them at face value, and then you test something out for yourself, and you're like, actually, that's not how that works.
It's interesting.
But yeah. It looks really good, but for me personally, the quality of life features of the compass, the item wheel, everything Night Dive did, vastly prefer the Night Dive remaster. I would love to see some way of, if not implementing the quality of life features into this, or implementing the ray tracing features into the port. Please, for the love of God, add some better reconstruction technology to this game, so it's possible to, play it for everyone, not just people with very powerful GPUs.
Is Sex Backwards open? I can't remember if that was opened up.
XeSS, yeah. I think XeSS is hardware agnostic, but it runs a lot worse unless you have an Intel card, because you need those like matrix
quality
cores.
was better though.
I think because I was watching a Digital Foundry Direct recently where they were talking about Intel really fucked up with XeSS's implementation, where if you're not running it on an Intel card, it's almost like XeSS Lite, and they should have changed because a lot of people were like, oh, it's a new upscaling technology. They ran it without an Intel card, and they were like, oh, this doesn't look great, and it doesn't run, it doesn't actually give me a lot of performance. And they were getting the wrong idea. It's like XeSS is actually quite good, but it runs and looks a lot better if you have that matrix cores on the Intel cards.
That's what it's designed for, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess there's a potential of making it open that might become the standard, but I guess at the moment we've just got 3 competing implementations.
Yeah, that is the Quake 2 deep dive. I showed you my 10 videos worth of footage of Quake 2, and I said,
yep.
You were like, are we doing another game of Quake 2? And I was like, Tony, we're not going to have time to do it.
Well, I didn't realize we were going to do 10 Quake 2s.
Well, we didn't do 10. This is all the same game. It's all the same game.
Well, okay. If you say so.
It is one remaster. I only played the content of a remaster and the contents of an RTX version of that same game.
Right.
It's all within the package. This is everything. Okay, so Tony, this is everything you can play if you own Quake 2 Remastered. If you own a copy of Quake 2 Remastered, you can download Quake 2 RTX for free on Steam. So this is everything you can play through Quake 2. So this is the full Quake 2 experience deep dive for the Quake 2 Remaster. And what I rated, Tony, it's fucking sick.
I guess the last thing is like comparing it to Quake 1.
Yeah.
They prefer the levels of like the design idea for Quake 1, but do you prefer Quake 2 in its weapons and features and things? Is it just so different that it's just like 2 separate?
I mean, there's stuff like the railgun where I'm like, oh, I love this gun and I wish it was in Quake 1, but then there's, I think the Thunderbolt is okay. Like, it's a pretty cool gun. Aesthetically, linearly designed. The atmosphere, the music, Quake 1, much prefer. Like Quake 1 for me is like a 5, and Quake 2 is like a 4.5, I would say.
Okay.
Like, don't get me wrong, Quake 2 is fucking amazing, but there's just something about Quake 1, like with the simplicity. There's a shotgun, there's a super shotgun, there's a nail gun, there's a super nail gun, there's a grenade launcher, there's a rocket launcher, there's a gun that shoots lightning, and that's it. That's the whole game. There's having, 50 different types of weapons is cool, but there's just something so nice about the simplicity of Quake 1. It's linear, you have weapons, you need like explosives to kill like the zombie enemies. Also, Quake 1 Remaster had like way more modded stuff compared to Quake 2's Remaster. I would like to see potentially Quake 2... If there's Quake 2 updates down the line where they add popular Quake 2 mods, like they did for Quake 1, that would be really cool to see. That could, really turn up Quake 2 Remastered. Like, the thing is, for me, I feel like Quake 2 Remastered is almost a 5 out of 5 game, but I feel like I like Quake 2 Remastered so much because of the changes they made for the remastered version.
Right. Okay.
Whereas I feel like if I played the Quake 1 without the remastered elements, I would probably like it a similar level to the Quake 1 remaster because there's not huge changes like the compass or the item wheel or stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's my thought on Quake
So,
2. Really worth your time, especially if you love FPS games, you love retro FPS games. If you like games, play Quake 2, especially the remaster. The Quake 2 remaster by Night Dive, it's legit. It's really good. Try it out. What's your question, Tony?
no question. Just saying it's a complex beast in
Yeah.
remade.
Well, you know, my nuts are quaking, and we've done a deep dive
It's
on those nuts, so I think we're ready
a
to go.
night dive into a deep dive.
Night deep dive on those nuts, yeah. And
Yeah.
we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.